Hello, friends, and welcome to tonight's audio test stream. Oh no. Let's fix the microphone. Step 1, fix the microphone. Okay, that should be better. You probably didn't hear any difference. So, tonight I'm going to be doing a straight teach of One Deck Galaxy. We're going to be making a better video with effects and pop-up graphics and all that cool stuff. But with everything going on, haven't had time. Most of our efforts are going into getting the games to everybody right now. But I want to give at least a decent explanation video to everyone using this extremely professional setup, which is definitely not a camera dangling off of my overhead microphone, so that if I even touch the table, it shakes. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and start. So this is one copy of One Deck Galaxy. I'm using the deluxe plastic cards because that's what I have here. Let's talk about what is in the box. So there are two rule books. There is the Galaxy Guidebook, which is the main rule book, and the Adversary Quick Guide, which has little illustrated diagrams of how to set up each of the adversaries and a little explanation of where the cards go, and sort of an overview of their mechanics. We have a stack of large cards. We have a stack of small cards. We have 30 dice. We have all of these fancy tokens. These are the deluxe ones. The regular ones are cardboard, but they still work just fine. A box and a set of campaign sheets that I'm not going to go into explaining right now because that's not the core rules of the game. Okay, so in the small stack of cards, there are essentially two decks here. One Deck Galaxy has two decks. There are 40 cards, which have the normal One Deck Galaxy back, which are all of the locations and the encounters that you'll be going through during the game. If I was smart, I would have shuffled this before demoing, but whatever. And then there are 35 other cards. These are sets of 7 cards. So in the top left corner, you can see this little adversary icon, which corresponds to whichever adversary I go to. Each adversary has a confrontation card, a rules card. So this is the actual concrete rules for how each adversary works. It'll always be in play, and it is the official resource for what you need to know when you're playing as the adversary. Then there are 5 adversary events for each of the adversaries. So this is for the Preservation Authority. There's another set of cards for Dark Star Syndicate, for the Optimization Calibrator, for the Hungry Nebula, and for the Nibelwoober Colony Fleet. I'm going to set up a game with the Nibelwoobers because that generally is what we do for demos. If you shuffled this deck of cards before you looked at it, that's your own fault, and we're sorry. The large deck of cards, there are several groups of things, and this one has been shuffled. So, inevitable comeuppance. I just made fun of people, and that's my own fault. So, there are several different things here. First off, there are homeworld cards. The Tim Tillowinks, the Zibzab, the Felici, the Plum Plum, and the Elements. Each of these have a 2-player side and a 1-player side. Depending on whether there are 1 or 2 people in the game, that's which side you use. There are society cards. Similarly, have a 2-player and 1-player side. And then there is the Starbase. The Starbase is 2 different cards because there is the Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and Class 4 version of the Starbase. You'll start with a Class 1 Starbase because you're a newbie. And then there are the 5 adversary cards. So each of the adversaries has a normal version and a special challenge version. The number of stars up at the top sort of indicates how difficult each adversary is. We're going to use the Nibels on their regular setting, so we're going to pull that out. So to set up the game, you're going to make 3 choices. And I'm going to set up for a 1-player game, mostly because this desk is small and there isn't space. So you pick an adversary. And when you pick the adversary, you're going to take out the adversary confrontation card and put it next to it like that, the adversary rules card, and the adversary events cards. The events cards are going to go underneath the shuffled deck. Listen to that beautiful shuffle. Underneath. So you shuffle the Galaxy deck, you put the adversary events underneath, because when you get to the bottom of the deck, much like One Deck Dungeon stairs mechanic, an adversary event is going to pop out and do something bad. The Hungry Nebula has a slightly different setup for events. We're not going to talk about them because that's not who we're playing right now. Okay. Rulebook. Then you have to choose who your federation is going to be. And to build a federation, you're going to need a homeworld and a society type. And you can choose any pair you want. I'm going to randomly select the Felici and the Explorers, which is good because they talk about resources. And you put them together like this. Ooh, we've got glare in that corner. We're going to go over here where there is less glare. Great. Very professional setup. So your homeworld and your society go together as a pair. This is important for a couple of reasons. One, you over here, you're going to have all of the resources you're getting. Yeah, resources. All the dice you're rolling each turn. Over here are the texts that you're going to be able to use to do cool things. And these little blue guys here are the milestones you're going to try and achieve over the course of play. The next thing we need to do is put tokens on stuff. So we put down our... You can see this beautiful Band-Aid because I almost cut my thumb off making demo stuff for PAX Unplugged this week. Good times. Luckily, my fingernail saved me. All right. So I've put out the 4 adversary tokens on the 4 circled spaces on the adversary card, and the 4 Federation tokens on the 4 Federation level spaces on our Society type card. As we complete milestones, we're going to move tokens over, and you're going to see that your Federation level is going to go up. So Federation level 3, 4, 5. Getting your Federation level higher is good for some reasons that I'll get into later. But taking care of your milestones is a very important thing in the game. I apologize that the text is not super legible on this video. You can kind of read it. This is the setup we have. Like I said, when we make a real video down the line, we're going to have better graphics and stuff. This is just what I could put together on the fly. We also need to put our Starbase into play. And as I said, we're going to start out with Starbase Class 1. And the Starbase gets one of the beautiful Starbase tokens on it down there. And then all the rest of these tokens are going to form what is called the General Supply over here in the corner. So I'm going to put the Starbase up here. I'm going to put the Nibelwoober's information card over here. Here. Space. Right. So this is a setup game. We are ready to begin. I'm going to talk through some of the concepts in the game next. So like One Deck Dungeon, there's a bunch of cards in this deck which are split between locations and encounters. They all have lots of boxes and rings on them, indicating things you need to do to complete colonization or tech building for these places. That's why I have all these dice over here. Ooh, sorry. Camera's really getting shaky there. Your homeworld tells you what dice you're going to roll every turn. So for the Felici, I'm going to get 5 yellow dice, 2 pink dice, and 3 blue dice every turn, 2 of these tech stars. And we're going to roll these, and the general core rule of One Deck Anything is that you need to fill up boxes with dice of that color that are that value or higher. So, for example, this card here, I could put a 4 onto this 4. I could put a 6 onto this 3 because it is the same color and it is higher. And then you have larger boxes. Large boxes, obviously you can't have a single die that has an 8 in it, but large boxes can take any number of dice. So I could put a 6 and a 3 to be 9, which is higher than 8. covering up boxes is important for reasons we'll get into in a bit. But that's the core mechanic of the game, filling in boxes with the dice you roll each turn. At the end of the turn, all these dice are going to go away, so you don't get to save them. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm going to go through essentially one turn of the game. The bottom of the adversary card shows the phases of the turn. Each turn has an adversary phase when the adversary does bad stuff, a discover phase when you fill in the galaxy with cards, an action phase, which is when you roll your dice and use them for all the things you want to do dice things with, and then results, when all of your placed dice do the thing you place them there to do. There isn't an inherent turn limit in the game, but the different adversaries, as they do bad stuff, are going to move closer and closer towards overwhelming you. If the adversaries overwhelm you, you lose. Each adversary has their own rule for overwhelming. For example, the Nibelubers here say defeat. At the start of the adversary phase, you are overwhelmed if the Nibelubers have at least twice as many colonies as your Federation level. So currently, we're Federation level 1. So if they had 2 colonies at the start of a turn, we would lose because we'd be overwhelmed. We'll go over how they get colonies in a bit. Let's go through a turn. So during the adversary phase, there's also nice little helper icons for some of the things that are special. The first thing that happens during every adversary phase is you discard 1 or 2 cards, depending on which side of the adversary is up. The challenge sides discard 2 cards per turn, normal sides discard 1. So we discard 1 card from the deck. This is bad because we get closer to the event cards at the bottom. You don't want events. Events are always bad. There's no good events. It's all bad. Next, it says the adversary gains 1 influence. So we're going to give 1 influence to the Nibelubers. So I'm just tucking a card under here with the 1 dot showing. The back of every 1-deck Galaxy card has a side with 1 dot and a side with 2 dots. These are used to count influence at a variety of different locations during the game. The adversary can have influence, the starbase can have influence, different locations can have influence as you get closer to completing them. And I'm going to take 1 step back and finish one more part of setup, which is that the starbase is supposed to begin with 2 influence under its left side and a random card under its right side to start you off with some fleets and some science. One of the other things influence can represent are ships at your starbase. So currently I have 2 ships in my fleet, which I can use for various purposes. I also have 4 science over here, because I got lucky and got a good card. Okay. So, it's going through adversary phase. Then there's this exclamation point over here, which means that the Nibelubers have a special thing. So on their rule card here, it says, if the adversary has 3 influence, discard them, and they gain a colony from the deck. Otherwise, escalate. Escalate is a keyword that is different for every adversary. For the Nibelubers, it says they gather dice and stars equal to the icons they have. So you'll see that the Nibelubers have little stats over here, the same as we do. So they get to roll dice every turn, which is rude because we're here to roll dice. So I'm going to go ahead and take out 1 of each die color from the things. That's what they're showing over here. And we roll them. Oh dear, that's bad. Each die that is value X or higher and all of the stars are added to their horde. So X is the number over here, which is the lowest in the card that you can see. As we confront the adversary, this number is going to change. So right now, they only have to roll 3 or higher to steal a die. If we confront them, that's going to get harder for them to do, so it's an incentive for us to fight the adversary. So right now, both of these are 3 or higher. They go over to the Nibeluber card, which is their horde. This is bad. We don't want it. But this die goes back to the general supply. And they are done escalating. Okay, I'll put this roll card back here. We're going to get on with the rest of the turn. So after the adversary phase is the discover phase. During the discover phase, we refill the discovery zone to 4 cards. This is similar to exploring a 1-deck dungeon, but these cards all go face up. Because these are all the places that the people of our civilization have spied out with their telescopes and seen. Like, oh, it's some ships and some worlds and Starburger, a very important location in the galaxy. Okay. That's it for the discovery phase. That is the simplest phase out of all the phases. If there's already 4 cards out there, nothing happens. If there had been 3 cards out here, we just add 1. You don't replace the cards that are already out there. Some of the adversaries have effects that happen based on how full the discovery zone is, but not the Neebelwoobers, because they have no little icons here. Then we go on to the action phase. Action phase is the core of the game. This is when we get to roll dice. This is when we get to do stuff. And we're here to do stuff. We like stuff. Stuff is fun. So, I've already gathered all these dice over here and some tech discs. So I'm going to go ahead and roll all of these dice. This is the gather portion of the action phase. Roll our dice, and this becomes our dice, our pool. Did I roll these? I don't know. I'm rolling them again. So your pool is all of the dice and tokens you have access to during the turn. We also refill up the starbase here. Each of the slots down here gets a starbase token. As your starbase gets better, it'll have more slots for more stuff. So we have all these dice here. And I'm going to go to the rule book, which is very helpful in listing out all of the different things that you can do with your dice. Action types. Place a die or discs, use a tech, calibrate, combine dice, return dice. Don't return dice, it's a terrible option. So, placing dice or discs. This is what I was talking about earlier. You're going to use dice to go into spots that are the right color and are equal to or lower than the value you're showing. So, for example, Flutara here, I could put this little 5 here to cover up this 5 slot, and a 1 to cover up this 1 slot. So there are 2 different types of cards out here. There are locations, which have the blue frame, and there are encounters, which have the red frame. Locations each have 2 rows. So there's a top row, and the benefit of filling in the top row is 1 influence. There's a bottom row. The benefit of filling in the bottom row is also 1 influence. Some of the cards are harder and give different rewards based on how challenging the things are. So when you're filling in location cards, you want to fill in the whole row all at once. Encounter cards, you need to fill in the entire card during 1 turn, or else you get no benefit for it. So to fill in Terra Infirma here, we would need to have a yellow 5 or higher. We don't. And then a set of yellow dice that are 7 or higher. We do. But I'm not going to do that because we can't actually finish the card. So that's placing dice. Placing discs, you'll notice that in some of these cards there are science or fleet costs. So to fill in one of those, you need to have the requisite number of fleets or science at your starbase. So let's pretend that we're a couple turns in, and I had a bunch of fleets here. So we have 6 fleets at our starbase. It's amazing. I'm not cheating at all. That totally happened. And I want to fill in this disc here. So what we do is we spend the 4 fleets, and to spend fleets, you just take that many dots from your starbase and discard them. You can always rotate to make change, and in fact, you have to. If say we needed to spend 3 fleets, I could rotate one of these cards and leave a 1 over there. So we spend 4. And then we take a disc from the starbase and cover up that slot. That shows that the ring is filled. You'll notice that we only have 1 starbase token at the class 1 starbase. That means you can only fill in 1 ring per turn at the start of the game, and you'll need to upgrade your starbase to be able to do better than that. So that's how you fill in a ring. Something else that is important is each of these location cards has a restriction on them. Starburger, for example, says restriction, no dice with value 1, 2, or 3. So we can't use this pile of dice to fill in the 13 because some of them are 2s, and that's not allowed. Starburger is not here for your cheap value menu items or something. It's thematic. So each location has a different restriction. Flutara here says all dice here must have different values, which I satisfied by having a 5 and a 1. Chelona said no dice with value 6, so I could not use this 6 and a 5 to fill in the bottom row. Importantly, when a restriction says all dice here must have different values, it's counting both rows, so I could not put a pink 1 down here because it would violate the rule of the restriction. So you spend your turn filling in as many of these things as possible. I'm going to fill in some extra stuff, just changing some dice to cheat and illustrate. Look at all of these beautiful 6s that I definitely rolled and were not cheating. So we filled in some stuff. So that's placing dice or discs. The next thing you can do as an action is use a tech. So your tech's over here. You start with 1 tech on your homeworld. You start with a tech on your society card. And what a tech does is some sort of cool effect that is spelled out on the card. To activate a tech, you're going to spend a tech disc and place it on the tech you're using to show that it's used up for the turn, and also to show that you've used up your number of techs you can use in a turn. Right now, I can activate 2 techs. Thankfully, I only have 2 techs. I'm going to make this up here. So your Society Special Tech has several tiers. So the Explorers, for example, have the Probe Armada. So at the beginning of the game, you can return up to 2 dice and gain that many black 3s. If you're Federation level 3, you could return up to 3 dice and gain black 4s instead. And if you're at Federation level 5, you can return 4 dice for black 6s. We haven't talked about black dice yet, but they're really cool. Black dice are wild. They can go into any box of any color, which is super useful. They are called Ultra Tech dice. Yellow dice are energy, red are pink are materials, and blue are diplomacy. I forgot to mention that earlier. Oops. Your homeworld also has a technology, and for the Felici, that is Noble Efficiency. Resolve up to 2 location rows and then discard any dice and discs used. This lets the Felici do sort of like a half-baked results phase early, which can be useful for some tempo reasons. As you play through the game, you're going to wind up gaining more techs down here, and they're more traditional things like Kaleidoscopic Grid just says spend 2 fleets to roll 4 different dice. Most of the techs are things like that. They let you gain dice, reroll dice, increase dice, the stuff you would expect. All right, so that is using a tech. So use a tech. We're going to place this. I'm going to use the Probe Armada. It says return up to 2 dice, gain that many black 3s. I'm going to return these 2, and I gain 2 black 3s. Great. Next thing you can do is calibrate. So the star base up here has 2 things, the lower left and lower right corner. It says you can spend a fleet to increase or decrease a die by 1. You can spend 3 science to roll a black die. Those 2 things do exactly what they mean. So if I really wanted this yellow 2 to be a yellow 3, I could spend 1 fleet from the starbase, and since there were 2 there, I can rotate the card to show that there's just 1 left over. And you just tick up the die. Or I could spend a bunch of fleets to roll an extra black die. When you're spending science, you can spend 3 science to roll a black die. When you're spending science, you don't get to make change. So I have 4 science, but it's all on 1 card. So if I did that, I would lose the card. I would get to roll the die. I would add it to my pool. I would be sad because it's a 2, and because I lost a science by wasting it. you can combine dice. Let's say I have a bunch of dice over here, and they're the wrong color. Again, I totally rolled these. You saw it. You can take any 2 dice, and you can turn them into a black die by combining them. The black die comes in as the lower of the 2 dice you're combining, and the 2 combined dice go back to the general supply. So if you have a bunch of dice of the wrong color, but you rolled decently, you can transform them into black dice, which you can place on any color box. Keep in mind, there are only 6 black dice in the supply, so if you run out of them, you can't make any more black dice for the turn. Finally, you can return dice. This is a very rarely used option. It's only for some edge cases where you have a tech that needs to make some dice. You can just send a die back to the general supply. Almost never happens, but it's there in case you really want to do something neat. Like, you have a tech that says, add a yellow die, and you've taken all the yellow dice out of the supply already. Maybe you need to do it. Okay. One place I haven't talked about yet is the starbase, and I'm going to mostly go over this during the results phase. We're going to put some dice up there. You can see that there are 3 levels over here on the fleet side, and there's sort of a research lab that says any dice can go here. The left side of the starbase takes pairs and triples. So, for example, I could put these 2 3s here because they are equal. And these 3 dice that I definitely rolled were all 1s. You saw that. I rolled them. So I could put these 3 1s down here. These are going to give us rewards based on what row they're in. In this case, they're going to give us 2 and 3 fleets. And let's say I rolled a bunch of dice over here. This was a great turn. I rolled like 20 dice, even though I don't have most of them. The dice you have left over at the end of the turn don't really have any value because you don't get to keep them between turns. So you generally put whatever's left over into the research lab. And they'll get turned into science. Okay. So this was an extremely productive action phase. Oh, one more thing. The confrontation card. During the action phase, one other place you can put dice is the confrontation card. And you'll need to fill in these rows to remove the adversary tokens. You generally don't do this in the first turn. I'll talk about that in a minute. So the action phase ends, and we move on to results. So during the results phase, we resolve everything that's happened during the turn. All of the dice we've put out, all the stuff we did. First off, you look at the locations in play. Actually, let me just check this rulebook real quick and make sure we've got the order right. Because that would be a bad thing to mess up during the demo of the game. And is a great advertisement for using the rulebook to remember what's going on. Step 1, resolve. So we resolve each card in the discovery zone in any order, then the starbase, then the adversary confrontation card. It says it in the rulebook. Good job, rulebook. So let's look at the discovery zone. We've got 4 cards out here. We didn't fill in this encounter, so nothing happens. We look at Flutara. So we filled in the entire top row here. So we're going to gain 1 influence there. We take the top card of the deck, we tuck it under the card, showing 1 icon, and all the dice that were there go back to the general supply. Down here, we filled in the bottom row. Starburger is going to get 2 influence. These dice go back. We filled in both of these. We're going to get a 2 and a 1. So importantly, whenever you're taking, spending, or replacing influence, you always do the minimum number of cards. The next time Chelonis gains 1 influence, it will rotate this 1 into a 2. You'll never have multiple 1s in a stack, which would be bad for you anyway, so you wouldn't really want to do it. But this just makes it discreet and simple. Okay, so that's resolving the discovery zone. We gained influence at these places. After you do that, any of the locations where you have enough influence, you would get to claim. So you can see at the top left, there's an influence cost. So Starburger needs 8 influence to complete. Flutara needs 4. Chelonis needs 5. Let's pretend it's another turn. We just gained 2 more influence here, and we've got 5, and Chelonis is finished. what you do, you discard all of the influence there. They go to the discard pile. Then you get to claim this card as either a colony or a tech. And that means we're going to take it at our homeworld card and either tuck it under the left edge, which is going to give us more dice, more tokens every turn, or under the bottom edge as a tech, which gives us another tech to use. Making this decision is one of the more important things in the game because it determines what direction your site is going in. You also see this little resource guy here shows either way. I'm going to explain resources in a minute, but they're useful for a variety of tech-related reasons. And I'm going to put it down here at the bottom. So now we have a tech. Whoops. Now we have knocked off all the tokens from the card. There is no limit to the number of techs and colonies you have. The drawback of having lots of techs is you might not have enough discs to use them. The drawback of having lots of colonies is you might want to have some techs instead to give you things to do with your dice after you roll them. Okay, so that's resolving the discovery zone. You'll note there's an empty space here which will get filled in during the next discover phase. Next we go on to resolve the starbase. So first we resolve the fleet side of the starbase. So we see we've got this row filled for 2 fleets, this row filled for 3 fleets. We're gaining 5 fleets. So we're going to wind up with 6, which is 3 2s. So we take 2 cards off the deck and rotate this one to tick up to a 2. And we've got 6 beautiful fleets there. Imagine. And all of those dice go to General Supply. Sorry, General Supply, you're falling off the playmat. Next up, we do the research lab. So we've got 5 dice in the research lab. Research lab dice can be used for 2 different options. I'm going to bring this card up so it's a little bit clearer. You can see Probe, the top card of the deck, costs any 3 dice. And you can only do it once per turn on the Class 1 starbase. As your starbase gets better, you can do it more times. As it gets much better, the cost goes down, which is really cool. Right now, we're Class 1. So I can spend 3 of these dice to launch a probe. So I take the top card of the deck, flip it face up, and it becomes science. So we just randomly got 2 science. The second option is study, which takes a location in play to use directly as science. It costs 1 die for each science in the card. So, for example, taking Starburger would cost 4 dice. But there's a discount of 1 for each influence you've already got at the location. Starburger here has 2 influence, which means that its cost is 4 minus 2 is 2. We have 2 dice. We're going to spend those, and we're going to claim this as science. Any influence location get discarded, and there you go. After you finish resolving the starbase, if you have enough science, you can choose to upgrade it. Upgrading the Class 1 starbase costs 8 science. I'm going to cheat and pretend that we had also sent a second probe on a previous turn. It's magic, it happened. So if I had 9 science here, I could spend all of them, and then that will upgrade the starbase to Class 2 for the next turn, which is a big boost. When you upgrade to Class 3, you just swap out the card and you have the Class 3. Upgrade to Class 4, you have the really, really cool starbase, and that's all the upgrading you can do. You will notice that as the starbase upgrades, both your study and probe costs go down, and you get a bunch more rows over here, and you get more starbase tokens every turn. Upgrading the starbase is good. Okay, that is results phase starbase. The final thing would be, if we had filled in a bunch of these rows earlier on the turn to confront the adversary, and these boxes work the same as anything else. The only trick is, on the left side here, some of the rows have a Federation level requirement. So you can't do your second confrontation with the Neebles until you're Federation level 2, your third until you're level 3, and your fourth until you're level 4. In addition to filling in the things. So if you have filled in... Oh, sorry for the camera shake. If you filled in the entire top row, you take away the top adversary token, and you put it over here in the starbase. This is important for two reasons. One, you can see that the X value has changed. So every time the Nibelubers escalate now, they're going to need to roll 4 or higher to steal a die to their horde. Secondly, if you get overwhelmed, you can discard an adversary token. You can exile an adversary token. Exiling means go to the game box to prevent the overwhelm. So you can save yourself for one turn by doing that. So you can earn up to essentially 3 extra lives by doing 3 confronts. When you do your 4th confront the adversary, you can see this big space opens up that says win. That means you win. Your ultimate goal is to confront the adversary 4 times. And then these tokens go away. And we feel really good because we confronted the adversary. Hooray! Okay. So that is how you play through a turn of One Deck Galaxy. Let me talk about some other stuff that happens. Hold on. I'm actually going to grab water real quick, and I'll be right back. Apologies for the shaky cam. Okay, I'm back. Camera, settle down. Calm down, calm down. Okay, different techs. That is the event deck. We don't want it. So for example, actually, the tech that I took down here, Fluid Network. Roll a blue. If you have 3 water, also reroll any or all of your dice. This is where these resources come into play. So as you gain colonies and techs, you're going to get more resource icons showing. And based on which ones you get, they will power up some different technologies and give you a little bit of direction towards what you want to do. This Terra Infirma tech, if you have a bunch of plants, will let you set different dice to 2. And they all are different things. So resources are good for that. They don't have any inherent value other than boosting the techs that refer to them, except for the explorers here, because the explorers milestone are all about having resources. So let's talk about milestones too. Milestones are your goals. So for the explorers here, it says have 6 of one resource. So let's pretend I had accumulated 6 waters. When that happens, you just immediately get to move over a Federation token, increasing your Federation level on the spot. And you're happy because that means 1, you're closer to upgrading your tech. 2, you might be able to confront the adversary better. And 3, it makes you harder to overwhelm. Each of the societies also have a special ability. For the explorers, I'll just read it out loud. It says, count resource icons in the Discovery Zone as if they were attached to your homeworld. This is really cool for the explorers because they care about having these. So, for example, here, there's 3 different plant icons in the Discovery Zone, and it's like they're attached to my homeworld, both for different techs and for my milestones. This is cool. You like it. It is good. The different societies have different abilities. The Guardians get to ignore restriction text. Scientists can use Starbase and Star tokens interchangeably. 2 stars becoming a Starbase token. The Botanist gets to store dice between turns. And the Mathematician can throw a die here to make all dice of that value essentially black dice for the rest of the turn. And they all have different milestones, which sort of play into the things they're doing. One important note, say about the Guardians. The Guardians specifically talk about exiling colonies. This is going to be the fact that we put out soon. You take these specific 3 milestones as actions. So This first Guardian milestone says exile colonies with these 3 icons on that. To claim this milestone, you just exile the colonies on the spot. This should say action exile colonies, or so it should say anytime : exile colonies with yellow, red, blue. Okay. Adversary events. I did not talk about these. So when the deck runs out, you set aside an adversary event, you reshuffle the deck, put it back. During the next adversary phase, this event will get revealed. Something bad will happen. You'll read it. This one says the players must exile a tech, exile some tokens, blah, blah, blah. And the Neebles get it as a bonus colony. Events are always bad. You don't want them to happen. So you do not want to blast through the deck. So you have to manage where you're putting resources and stuff. If you're just amassing dozens and dozens of fleets, that's bad because the deck's going to reshuffle really fast. So don't do it. Okay. So that's the core rules of the game. When we put out the main gameplay video with, animations and stuff, we'll do a little more concrete, but I wanted to put this video out there so that people had just me talking you through the game, at least, to start. If anybody in chat has any questions or things, feel free to toss them in right now. We're going to be posting this video to YouTube so that people who aren't here at this weird hour on a random Monday on Twitch can also see it. And like I said, later in December, we're going to actually produce a video with a camera that is not dangling from a microphone. Also, if anybody in chat recognizes that I have missed an important rule or something that needs to be explained, this would be a great time for it. But I think I got through all the main things. If not, I'm going to close up this video. And we're going to be playing this all weekend at Unplugged, PAX in Philly this weekend. And I'm very excited to see this game getting out in people's hands because we've been working on it for a long time. Nubari says, when using the Starbase tokens, you need to have the stuff then, or can you wait until the Starbase updates? You need, when you place a Starbase token, before you can move the token, you have to spend the cost here. So the 2-part execution of this is spend 4 fleets. 4 fleets are gone, move token. So you cannot get those at the end of the turn. It must be done at the time. I know it's it's tough for a lot of us that have been beta testing this for a long time because a lot of the timing rules evolved and changed over the course of development, my opinion, for the better. The biggest, latest change we made was to streamline the results phase to all happen at once at the end of the turn. The very, very first prototype let you fill in rows and get influence instantly, which was neat, but you lost that feeling of slowly filling up the field of play and saying, okay, I've done all this. Oh, maybe I want to do this instead. Oh, maybe I want to do this instead, which is one of the more fun things that you get to do in One Deck Dungeon, shifting around the things and figuring out as you go. Okay, so thanks anybody who came by during the stream now, and to anybody who's watching this later, thanks so much for purchasing and or backing or reviewing our game, and we hope to see you soon. Not starting soon, it's done. Goodbye, everybody.